So good morning to all of you. In today's lecture session, we will discuss in detail regarding mass spectrometry and its introduction. Okay. So before going to the actual details, first we need to understand why we need to know something about structure of an organic compound and why it is relevant to pharmacy students. Okay, so this is the topic which we need to understand. Then we will go to the various components that are involved in determination of structure of an organic compound. Let's say in a pharmaceutical industry, you join there as a chemist or a research scientist or anything like that. You will always be given with a drug molecule. Okay, so a drug is like a powder. Then you will be asked to do some kind of a formulation or a reaction or anything like that. Okay, so let's say if you are in formulation, then you need to ensure identity of a compound. Ensure identity of a compound. What do you mean by identity of a compound? What do you mean by identity of a compound? It is nothing but chemical structure. Okay, so it is nothing but chemical structure. So by knowing chemical structure only, we can have assurance of identity of a drug molecule. So then only we can do the next step. If you are in pharmacology, you can go from you can make use of this drug and then do the clinical screening. If you are in pharmaceutical analysis, only after ensuring the drug molecule, you can go for quantitative or qualitative analysis. It is all like that. But basically, structure gives scientific proof for any biological activity. Okay, structure gives scientific proof for biological activity. Then only we agree, because in pharmacy, though we have pharmacognosy and Ayurvedic principles are there, largely we depend on scientific proof for agreeing with the biological activity. So we always wish to see that a drug has assigned chemical structure. Then only we agree with the biological activity scientifically. Okay, so to give you a simple example why structure is very important for scientific world. Penicillin, you all knew this drug. Okay, penicillin was discovered in the year 1928. Okay, but it came into being and then it entered into the market in 1900, approximately 1935. By 1935, scientists have evolved methods, etc. And then in 1942, Nobel Prize was awarded for the discovery of penicillin that happened in 1928. Is it only Alexander Fleming who got the Nobel Prize? No. Along with him, another two members were there in the field who actually have done, one is fermentation for bulk production, and the second person has actually obtained crystalline material. So these crystalline materials were used by the scientist Hodgkin to obtain X-ray crystallographic picture. So through X-ray crystallography, we got structure, and these scientific outcomes were published in 1940, close to 1940. So once the structure of penicillin is established and its biological activity is established, then it is recognized as a scientific endeavor, and then in 1942, Nobel Prize was given. So until unless a structure is assigned to a biologically active molecule, it is never considered as a scientific experiment. So that is the kind of importance that we have. So did we stop there? What is its contribution? Because we know the structure of penicillin. Okay, for penicillin, now we know the structure. So because we know the structure, so that's the reason why we were able to modify the structure so that structure activity relationships were established. Because we know the structure, so mechanism of action was established. Because we know the structure, target molecules were, because target receptor or protein was established. Okay, because we have the structure, so that is the reason why penicillin, modified penicillins are there in the market. So through SAR, now we got acid resistant penicillin, penicillinase resistant penicillins, etc. are there, and then broad spectrum penicillins are also evolved only because we know the structure of the compound. Okay, so friends, because this is the reason why structure determination of organic compound is it plays a major role as far as biological activity of a compound is concerned. Until unless you establish the structure of a molecule, you cannot claim any you cannot claim any biological activity as a scientific experiment. Further, now we know adrenaline case. So we all know that the structure of adrenaline is like this: OH, OH, and then NH, CH3. We'll have a OH here. Now we know the structure of adrenaline, its stereochemistry, etc. Everything is known. So that is the reason why we were able to synthesize related molecules. So we could get agonists and antagonists for all these receptors. Okay. So because we know the structure, we were able to synthesize its derivatives by changing the aromatic ring, by doing some alterations over here, and also by changing the amino side. We have synthesized so many compounds so that we were able to establish the receptor subclasses and also their agonists and antagonists. So for example, beta 1 specific blocker, okay, so is used as anti-hypertensive. Okay, so it is like that. It is all it all happened only because we know the structure of adrenaline. Okay, so in the earlier days, a lot of time used to be spent on the establishment of a structure. Like for example, we know the structure of cholesterol. Cholesterol is known for the past 200 years, almost in 1850, approximately 1850. Scientists could isolate cholesterol from gallstones, okay? But its structure is elucidated in 1930, approximately 1930. Okay, and it took around 80 years for complete structural elucidation and also to give complete three-dimensional geometry. So because we know the structure of cholesterol, this study helped in establishment of steroidal hormones. Okay, so Paul Ruzicka, etc. So they got Nobel Prize in 1931 and 1932 because of, based on their contributions to cholesterol structural elucidation and steroidal hormone structural elucidation and studies on terpenes. Okay, so because it is taking a lot of time because of classical chemistry methods which are used for determination of structure. Okay, so this is the way how structure of an organic compound is very, very important for us as far as pharmacy is concerned, because we deal with drugs which are showing biological activity. Their structure, qualitative and quantitative information is very, very essential for us. Now, how can you establish structure of an organic compound? So one is very, very important component is establishment of elemental composition. And from elemental composition, we'll come to know about the molecular formula and then the molecular weight. Okay, so this is one part of structural elucidation. Maybe you can remember this one. In natural product chemistry, maybe in your B Pharmacy, you might have gone through this topic because this is a very important question in external exams. Okay, first one is molecular weight and then molecular formula. So these are the two things that will always be there in the beginning of the discussion of a structural elucidation of citral. And after this, molecular weight will be there. And after this, functional groups. Chemistry will be there. Okay. So in the structural elucidation of organic compounds, the first components are elemental composition, molecular formula, and molecular weight. That will be the first thing. And then we will do functional groups. All these are more like, and then we will do degradative reactions, etc., so that a molecular framework is obtained. And then we try to obtain the three-dimensional structure of the target molecule. Okay, so here this part is what we call it as classical organic chemistry method. Okay, so to give you a very simple idea, in your most probably first year B Pharm in organic chemistry laboratory, you might have done identification of unknown organic compounds. Okay, so where you will do functional group identification, solubility tests, unsaturations, etc. So that is the half part. Okay, so here to continue this discussion on the citral side, the molecular weight, molecular formula, etc. is on this side. And then followed by that, you might have heard of this one, okay? The number of double bonds, number of unsaturations, type of functional groups like aldehyde that are present in citral, and then degradation. In degradation, you will do ozonolysis, oxygen, KMnO ozonolysis, and KMnO4 degradation, etc. And from there, what is it that we will get? The molecular framework, and then we will do synthesis of the proposed molecules to obtain the structure. Sometimes the synthesis is done by using chiral specific reactions so that three-dimensional structure of the molecule is confirmed. Like in case of cholesterol. Cholesterol structure is completely elucidated by using classical chemistry reactions. At that time, in 1930s, we don't have a highly established spectroscopy methods are not there. NMR came into being in 1940s. X-ray crystallography, though it was invented in 1926, the commercial machines came into being in 1935 to 1940, at that period. Okay, so students, this is the way how structure of an organic compound is determined. So today we will be focusing more and more on various methods that are used for determination of molecular weight. Okay, so I hope I made myself clear here in explaining the significance of structure of an organic compound to a pharmacy graduate or a pharmacist. Okay, now significance of molecular weight. So why we need to determine the molecular weight? Okay, so the one is in our pharmacy, so we accept certain formulas like quantitative relation between drug and bioactivity. Okay, so the quantity of drug is directly proportional to biological activity. Okay, so to accept this one, what are the terms that we take into consideration? Molar weight. Okay, So 1 mole, 2 mole, 3 mole, etc. In these terms we talk. To obtain molar mass, okay? So in moles, 1 mole is equal to molecular weight, okay? So when we take, let's say, if you take benzene, what is the molecular weight of benzene? 72 plus 6, 78, okay? So 78 grams if you take is equal to 1 mole, okay? So 1 mole is equal to, so here is the 1 mole contains Avogadro number of molecules. So this is the way, this is where we connect with the number of molecules with biological activity, quantity, number of molecules of drug we have and its proportional biological activity. Okay, so here 6.023 into 10 power 23 molecules will be there in 1 mole of a substance. Okay, so here let's say if we have 10 molecules, let's say biological activity term is 8. Okay, let's say in numerical term, let's say biological activity is coming to 8 score. Then if you have 20 moles, 20 molecules of drug are given, it should go up to 16. Okay, so this is the kind of relation we will have. So these we can do, calculations we can do only when we know the number of molecules present in a given powder. Let's say if you have a spoonful of powder, so you can say 1 spoonful of powder gives you some biological activity. It is not scientific until unless we know how many number of drug molecules are there in the spoonful of powder. So then only we will come to know the mathematical relation between biological activity and the type of drug molecule that we have. Only then we can know something about potency of the drug molecule, and through that we can do modification of activity via structure activity relationships. Okay, so what molecular weight gives some kind of mathematical it gives us mathematical correlation, okay, a possibility of correlating biological activity with the quantity of drug by using mathematical equations. Okay, so this is one reason why we need to have information regarding molecular weight. Then how many methods do we have? Do we have only the mass spectrometry method, or any other methods are there? And why mass spectrometry is very important for us? So this is a very important thing that we need to understand. Mass spectrometry is not the only method that is available. Even before determination of molecular weights, but before the discovery of mass spectrometry, hundreds of molecules were already elucidated. Like for example, citral. Citral structure was elucidated before 1930, when there is no mass spectrometry. At that time itself, structural elucidation of citral happened. Cholesterol happened. Insulin, in fact, insulin structural elucidation was determined in 1925. So by using various other methods. Okay, so let's have a brief idea on the methods that we have. Then we will go to the mass spectrometry. Okay, so here in case of molecular weight determination, we have methods which are absolute methods, which allow molecular weight to be calculated directly from the measured quantities, like colligative properties. You already knew this one. Okay, so like colligative properties like osmotic pressure, through cryoscopy, vapor phase osmometry means, no, in simple terms, I'll tell you one thing. Depression in freezing point, elevation of boiling point, these are the two things that we have studied in physical pharmacy. So there you might have got some idea regarding molecular weight of the compound, means molar contribution of the drug molecule or the chemical towards quantitative difference in the either elevation or depression in the depression in freezing point or elevation of boiling point or any physicochemical property. Okay, so that is one. And osmotic pressure obviously is correlatable to molecular weight or molar presence only. And the next one is straightforward method, that is X-ray scattering. Now you know this one, X-ray diffraction. X-ray diffraction is one of the first class excellent method to determine three-dimensional structure of a molecule. Okay, so this is another method where we get information regarding structure, and then equilibrium sedimentation is another method. The second one is equivalent methods, means we need to have some knowledge regarding chemistry of the compound that we are going to study, so that we make use of that and then we try to determine the molecular weight. Okay, it is almost like equivalent method where N group analysis of a protein. Maybe you are aware of the term Sanger's method. Okay, Sanger's method, where we have amino acids A, B, C, D, E, F. Then we know what are A, B, C, D, F because we have 20 amino acids are there in insulin. Okay, insulin. Then if we gradually cut down one by one, then we will come to know what is the molecular weight of one of the fragment, the second fragment, third fragment, fourth amino acid, fifth amino acid, etc. And then we add A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus F, so that you will get the molecular weight of protein. Okay, so here we do one thing. A plus B means minus H2O, because we have a peptide bond here. Here we have another peptide bond. It is like this. In this way, molecular weight of protein can be determined. The next one is relative method. In case of relative method, what we do is we will have a physicochemical standard of a compound, and then we correlate that one with the physicochemical property of the same compound in different concentration or at different temperature. Okay, so this method is extensively applied in determination of approximate molecular weight of polymers. So polymers like gums, etc., where viscosity can be measured. So if you do the dilution and then if you find out the viscosity changes has a direct relation with the molecular mass of a polymer. Because still we don't have a dependable method for large polymers. So this is one of the methods that we have, relative methods like viscometry. Okay, so all these methods, they have their own advantages, they have their own disadvantages. So right now people are extensively using one of the method like X-ray crystallography. End group analysis is still being used in coupling, and this method is coupled with other advanced methods like mass spectrometry for determination of molecular weights. And dilute solution viscometry is still used in pharmaceutical industry to determine the viscosity of polymer solutions. Okay, and then if you see to what extent we can make use of these methods, as you all knew, in pharmaceutical sciences we use different types of chemicals. It is not always drugs that we use. Okay, so we use drugs and excipients, coloring agents, binders, disintegrating agents, and so on and so forth. So many things are there. Parallelly, right now we are having so many other types of molecules like biologicals are coming into the picture, like immunoglobulins, etc. So how do you identify the molecular weight of those things? So it is all a big question. So that's the reason why all these methods, whatever we just now we have seen, they have their own ranges where they can be applicable, and they have their own limitations as far as the chemistry of the type of compound they are going to be used. Like in case of here you can see small X-ray crystallography. In case of X-ray crystallography, we can use the drug for any chemical compound which is crystallizable. Okay, so we have X-ray crystallography structure of sodium chloride to X-ray crystallography structure of ribosome. Okay, so it has that much application. And then like in case of N group analysis, N group analysis, we can determine the structure of a protein, linear structure of a protein. Okay, so here also we can go to very high molecular weights. Whereas in case of depression in boiling point or ebullientiometry, cryoscopy, vapor phase osmometry, etc. So in these cases, the molecules need to be low molecular weight compounds. So then only we can determine their approximate molecular weight. The second one is here the accuracy with which they can determine the molecular weight is again another question mark. On an average, 5% error will be there. 0.5 to 5% error will be there in determining molecular weight by using these methods. Okay, except this one, X-ray crystallography, where you will get absolute information. Then, some of the significant contributions were made by scientists like Van Hoff. He determined the diffusivity and then their correlation with the molecular size and molecular weight. So he is one of the first scientists to get Nobel Prize in chemistry. And another very, very important scientist which we have to remember today is Fritz Perl, who actually determined devised a very, very important method, sensitive method for micro-analysis of organic compounds, So as I told you earlier, scientists used to take the chemical, go for elemental analysis. So here they used to use 1 gram per element in the beginning, and it is not very much accurate. So in case of microanalysis, so 10 milligrams is enough. So with this sensitive technique, scientists were able to determine molecular formula for compounds which are available in nature in very, very low quantity. Let's say steroidal hormones like testosterone. Okay, if you kill me and extract me completely, you would get approximately 500 milligrams of testosterone from my body. Okay, then you can imagine if we can ever elucidate at least the molecular formula of the compound. No, because we have contributions from Professor Fritz Perl, now we got the molecular formula of testosterone. Even complicated molecules like testosterone could also be elucidated with more accuracy. Okay, that's the reason why he was awarded Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1923. Okay, these are all the historical landmarks in determination of molecular weight of a particular organic compound. So all of them have their own advantages and disadvantages. Now, so why mass spectrometry became so popular and what exactly is special for mass spectrometry is what we have to see today. So in mass spectrometry, this is an analytical method to measure the molecular or atomic weight of samples. Both can be determined. Okay. So what is so special about mass spectrometry? In case of mass spectrometry, for small molecules or big molecules, it does not matter, but for small molecules, see, this is what is very, very important. Molecular weight can be determined at what accuracy, sensitivity. Okay, so the accuracy is 0.0005, means at the fourth digit. Fourth digit means if the molecular weight of benzene is 78, we can determine the molecular weight to up to this one, fourth digit. So if you can remember, if you see the atomic mass unit of hydrogen, it is 1.0009. Okay, please excuse me if this number is wrong, but only for your understanding I am giving you like this. Okay, so if you could determine the molecular weight till fourth digit or fifth digit, now even fifth digit is also possible with the latest machines that we have. With ion cyclotron resonance analyzer, we can go up to fifth digit. So here, because of this much accuracy, we can determine the molecular formula from molecular mass data alone. Okay, so how much sample is needed for mass spectrometry? 1 mg is more than sufficient for obtaining mass spectrum of any organic compound. The next one is, if you see for large molecular weight compounds, we can determine the molecular weight from 5 Daltons to 50 kilodalton proteins with the accuracy of 0.01%. Okay, so earlier no other technique in the field of molecular weight determination could produce this much accurate result. Okay, 1 Dalton is equal to 1 atomic mass unit. So these are the two things which have actually made mass spectrometry as one of the most sought after technique as far as molecular weight determination is concerned. The third and very, very important advantage of mass spectrometry is structure elucidation can also be mass spectrum. Okay, structural information could also be obtained from mass spectrum by using fragmentation analysis. Okay, so fragmentation analysis facilitates structural elucidation or structural confirmation by analyzing mass spectrum of an organic compound. Okay, so friends, because this is the reason why mass spectrometry became a very, very popular technique in molecular weight determination as well as the structural studies of organic compounds, both small molecule as well as big molecules. So in case of mass spectrometry, I give you only an outline of principle, etc. today. We will have detailed discussion regarding each one of these in the coming lectures. Okay, so in mass spectrometry, it's very, very simple. You will have three major components where you have the sample in vapor condition or liquid condition or solid condition, which is provided to the instrument, where the sample will be converted to a vaporous condition and then the sample will be ionized, so that the ionized samples are put into motion. Okay, so they will be forced to run. Then these running samples are allowed to pass through a mass analyzer. Okay, so when we provide energy to sample may get degraded. So thereby various molecular weights containing fragments can come. Then a mass analyzer will concentrate these fragments in such a manner that so they will collide with the detector in such a manner that we get the data regarding molecular weight in the form of a spectrum. Okay, so this is the way. So this is low, maybe this is high molecular weight. So this is the way how a sample which is provided to mass will be ionized, and then these ions are allowed to go through mass analyzer. Then a detector will give you the molecular weight information. So this is in simple what is there in case of mass spectrometry. Now we need to understand what actually is a sample and how it is given, and what are all the ionizers that we use, what are all the mass analyzers that we have, and what are all the detectors that we have, and then combination with other analytical techniques. Is what we will have to discuss in detail. Okay, so here let's have a little discussion, little information regarding the way how mass spectrometry evolved. Okay, so it all started in 1886 when Goldstein first discovered anode rays, and then J.J. Thomson extended their studies and then identified cathode rays, and then magnetic deflection was it became a scientific experiment in 1898, and then Robert Millikan first time scientifically proved elementary unit of charge. And then first mass spectrometer was utilized by J.J. Thomson to determine the molecular atomic the weight of an electron. And then first mass spectrometer with velocity focusing became a reality by Francis Aston. And then scientists further evolved, and then in 1940 approximately, time of flight analyzer was in principle used. And then in 1949, ion cyclotron resonance analyzer was determined. And then Marcus explains for the first time, monomolecular fragmentation ions. Okay, later on, McLafferty became the leading scientist who has contributed significantly in the fragmentation analysis. And then in 1942, double focusing instruments came into being. And then in 1943, quadrupole analyzer that we are using right now in LCMS, that became a reality. And then in 1956, high resolution instruments, HRMS, became a possibility. And then for the first time, McLafferty, who is actually the person behind McLafferty rearrangement, he actually first time integrated gas chromatography to mass spectrometry. And then in 1966, chemical ionization method became a possibility. In 1967 again, McLafferty has actually introduced collision-induced dissociation methodology. And then in 1969, field desorption mass spectrometry was actually came into being by Becky. And then in 1972, a reflectron that actually correlates the kinetic energy, means TOF analyzer, became reality in 1972. And then atmospheric APCA, atmospheric pressure chemical ionization method, became a reality in 1974. And in 1974 again, McLafferty and their team first time in principle proved that HPLC can be integrated with mass spectrometry. But this is not the first time. This is not actually what we are using right now in the LCMS. Okay, in 1974 again, FT, Fourier transformation ICR, became a reality. And in 1978, first time, triple quad, means quadrupole and another quadrupole, triple quadrupole mass spectrometry was actually, in principle, they have shown the practical utility of triple quadrupole. Then in 1981, FabMass became a reality. FabMass was awarded Nobel Prize in the coming years. And then in 1987, Professor Tanaka and his team, for the first time, established a scientific method that is what we call it as matrix-assisted laser desorption and ionization, MALDI, for which Tanaka got Nobel Prize. This is the method which extended the applicability of mass spectrometry to polymer analysis or protein analysis. And then in 1982, Professor Fenn studied whatever was established earlier, okay, and then used 2-3 different techniques to establish electrospray ionization, which has revolutionized bioanalytical field forever. And in 1991, time of flight and MALDI both were coupled together to study proteins and other organic compounds. And then here, so they designed methods so that high throughput screening can also be done by using this method. And then Orbitrap analyzer was introduced in 1999. Okay, so friends, this is the way how mass spectrometry evolved so significantly for the past 100 years. Now in the market, mass spectrometers, different types of mass spectrometers are available for various different types of applications that we have. Right now, the mass spectrometers that were introduced in 1913 were able to determine the molecular weights up to 2 digits. And now the kind of mass spectrometers that were invented till 1998, we could go up to 80 kilodaltons. Okay, so 80 lakh means we can even determine the molecular weight of immunoglobulins, etc. And so DNA was also reported 108 kilodaltons, and also 2.2 million daltons. Another tobacco mosaic virus was also studied by using molecular mass spectrometry. So these are all extreme examples. Okay. And then regarding sensitivity, there is a lot of change that was obtained right now. Now the sensitivity is in the octomole. Means if you go to 800 octomole, so which corresponds to just 480 molecules. 480 molecules. It means, let's say if you take 78 is the molecular weight of benzene. 78 grams is equal to 6.023 into 10 power 23. Okay, it is approximately like this. Means this is like 10 power minus 22 moles. Okay, so this is the way how the mass spectrometry became so sensitive right now. And accuracy is at 10 power minus 9 micro mass, okay, parts per million, in parts per million right now. So that's the reason why we can go up to 0.00000, means up to 5 digits very comfortably. So because we have expanded in the kind of mass range of compounds that we can analyze, and we have expanded in terms of sensitivity, we have expanded in terms of mass accuracy. So that is the reason why mass spectrometry is now an indispensable tool in the chemical analysis. Chemical analysis means mass spectrometry can be used for various fields. So that's the reason why regarding mass spectrometry, when you wanted to study mass spectrometry, you have to understand different types of ionization processes, ion thermochemistry, ion internal energy, time scale of events. You need to have a basic understanding on these topics, and also matter and mass, like isotopic mass, isotopic distribution, accurate mass. These are the terms which we need to clearly understand for better application of mass spectrometry. And then regarding instrumentation, mass spectrometry is one such technique where the user need to have a clear-cut understanding on the instrumentation, type of mass analyzer, type of analyzers, performance characteristics, combinations that are possible, modes of operation, vacuum systems, ion detectors, all these information is needed. Regarding technical aspects like sample introduction, ionization techniques, coupling of separation devices, means LC or HPLC, GC, etc. That information is also needed. And spectral interpretation, like fragment pathways, characteristic ions, rules, and tools that are available, systematic approaches for fragment analysis is to be studied in detail. And regarding its applications, every mass spectrometer has its own specific application, like gas chromatography and mass spectrometry. GCMS has application in volatile compound analysis. And QTOF, LCMS with the QTOF analyzer is excellent tool for analysis of proteins. Okay, so it is like that. So if you wanted to make use of mass spectrometry, then you need to have clarity regarding all these 6 aspects related to mass spectrometry: fundamentals regarding mass and matter, regarding technical aspects, regarding instrumentation, regarding spectral interpretation, regarding application. So all these fields need to be clearly understood for better application of mass spectrometry. So whenever we are dealing with any technique in mass spectrometry regarding analyzer or ionizer, we will be focusing on all these 6 aspects. Okay, so while studying each of the instrumental technique. So here in mass spectrometry, it can be used for elemental analysis, organic and bioorganic analysis, structural isolation of organic compounds, and characterization of ionic species, which is used for thermochemistry and physical chemistry studies. And also coupling to separation techniques can extend the mass spectrometry applications to quality control, environmental analysis, complex mixture analysis, forensics, petrochemical industry, and food chemistry. Okay. And then mass spectral imaging is right now, it is coming into the picture, so that mass spectral imaging helps you understand the relative distribution of a chemical in a given species. Okay, as far as our pharmacy is concerned, let's say if a tablet is given for mass spectral imaging, okay, so a tablet is analyzed in such a manner that how actually drug is distributed throughout a particular tablet can be studied by using mass spectral imaging. And miniaturization helped in extending mass spectral application to various other fields. Like, let's say recently we had seen an accident in a pharmaceutical industry where a lot of that is LG polymer industry, okay, a gas entered into the environment accidentally and many people suffered. So right now, if you wanted to test whether the environment is safe for relocalization, then you have to go and collect the air sample. Because of miniaturized, now we can do field analysis very easily. Okay, it is like that. So in principle, in case of mass spectrometry, a mass spectrometer generates multiple ions from the sample under investigation. It then separates them according to their specific mass to charge ratio and then records the relative abundance of each of the ion type. Okay, so this is in brief. What is the principle of a mass spectrometer? So here we have an ion source, and ions are passed through an aperture to generate ion beam that will be allowed through an analyzer, and then the molecular ions are segregated according to their weight so that they are determined by using a detector. Okay, so this is in simple the principle of mass spectrometry. Molecular weight, whatever the signal that we are getting, is actually mass to charge ratio. So the general layout of mass spectrometer is, we have 4 units are there. One is sample inlet, ion source or ionizer, mass analyzer, and a detector. And this entire setup will be kept under very high vacuum. And then each one of these units are connected to a data system, so that from the detector, whatever information that we got is plotted as a mass spectrum. Okay, so because we are getting things in lines, so that's the reason why we call it as spectrometry. Okay, mass spectrometry, but it is not spectroscopy. It is not spectroscopy, it is spectrometry. Yeah. So we will see in detail regarding each one of these components, regarding sample inlet, ion source, mass analyzer, and detector in the coming lecture sessions. Okay, in the coming lecture sessions, what we will see, what exactly is the mass spectrum, various terminologies that are there for identification of mass spectrum, and then we will go to the sample inlet, type of samples that can be given, and then ionizers. So these two we will discuss in the next lecture. Okay, so thank you all for your patient listening. We'll meet again in the next lecture and discuss regarding ionization sources.